stuff when Flag wasn't playing, or when Flag was in foul trouble, or the offense. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm biased because I like him, but I just feel like he's the most additive guy in the draft, and Daryl has always gravitated toward those guys. Like, remember, he made that Shane Battier trade. How many years ago was that? It was just like, we didn't have the stats to quantify all the stuff Shane Battier was good at. Daryl had the 1.0 version of those stats. And it was just like, no. When he's in the lineup, all of these awesome things happen. And it's not about the counting stats. It's this, and this. I think Knippel's like that. I think they need a guy like that. They need like a connector, shooter, doesn't need the.
That's asking a lot, though, of a team with now title aspirations coming in. Being like, all right, let's.
Honestly think they have title aspirations? Because I don't.
No way it's live now.
You think like they think? You think Daryl thinks?
No fucking chances live right now.
Orlando, like why not us? Like I think he's thinking.
Why is it live now?
Games? Okay, sure, right. But
What?
I was thinking about this the other day, and like the haul that Phoenix sent out for Durant and what they get, not even 2 years later, right?
It's what we call sunk cost.
Like when you see the side by side, that is one way to derail.
We both liked the trade. We just didn't understand why Cam Johnson was in it. That's my memory. But we both thought it was a good trade for them. They're getting an awesome player.
I'm fine with thinking it's good to get Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
If that ends up being something.
I still don't know why Cam Johnson was in it, but
yeah,
you're right.
It's very new, right? So yeah, 2 years, right? 2 years of not even right. We have to go back to February. What was the trade? It was February, right? Super Bowl week. This was in Arizona. I was thinking it might happen in the side by side, but it's very simple. Well, they shouldn't wait. So, well, they just got it. Okay, so, and if you're Phoenix, you're going 47 games last year, and we didn't have all of our guys. 45 games, excuse me. We didn't have all of our guys playing together at the same time. We didn't have enough flexibility. Kind of figured out some things on the margins. And if these three guys can all play together, we feel a little bit better about the center rotation. We have shooting to play off of what should be a ton of help to these three dynamic on-ball scorers. That's what people are still trying to deal. I got to say if, because the league, more than any other league, and you could argue with, say, quarterbacks and your pitching staff and breaking spring training, but because there's so few players, there's way more conversation of talking yourself in the if scenario. Same thing with the Clippers.
We went way over on the Suns, 47 and a half. We thought they were going to be good last year.
Yeah, so
we were right there with
the team. So
yeah,
they're thinking, hey, if this were great, it's better than the unknown, like hitting the reset button when the owner gets pissed about it, your business partners get pissed about it, your vet players get pissed about it. We in the media really overrate the simplicity of just, tear it all down and start all over again. The same reason why the Clippers would sit there again and go, well, look, what if Kawhi is healthy, and here we're the
Mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test. As a longtime Warriors fan, I think a quick review should happen. I'm about to answer that in a minute. I got you. Mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test. What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Gifted Hoops streams on Bleacher Report. What's good? I see as a long-term Warriors fan, I think a quick rebuild should happen. Moving Butler for Porzingis, White. Couldn't make out the words at the end there, but I get your sentiment. You think like a soft... Well, sorry. Technically speaking, if you trade Butler, that wouldn't be a soft. You want to do like a full rebuild. And I can understand the idea behind it. I do think that's not going to happen until these next 2 years play out with Steph, Draymond, and Jimmy Butler. I think all their contracts are aligned to at least see that pathway out. And I think after that, then we have to have a conversation about how the Golden State Warriors are going to retool and rebuild. For me personally, that is a conversation that will definitely be had on this channel for a pretty good while, all off season long. That's definitely a thing that I am really trying to, I would say, wrestle with myself, because there's a lot of things to think about, right? Like anytime when you're thinking about a rebuild to redo your team, your franchise, you really have to like gauge what position is that going to put you in. Like, what is specifically that going to do for your franchise if you carry that out? That becomes the question. I think for me personally, Golden State's in a very awkward position, which I'm finally here and excited to speak on. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But what's good, everybody? Welcome back to another Gifted Hoops live stream. As I said earlier, a lot has happened. We are officially out of the NBA Finals that just ended. The Oklahoma City Thunder are your championship that won 68 games this year, went on and won in the playoffs to win their first championship ever in franchise history. Shout out to Oklahoma City Thunder. We've spent a lot of time unpacking the Pacers versus Oklahoma City series and just seeing all of the different growths of people in the franchise and whatnot. We've seen a lot of I would say, different shifts and rotations moving forward. It's very unfortunate how it ended, because I generally feel like this has been easily one of the more enjoyable NBA finals in recent memory. I would argue it's probably top three of the last decade, if not the best one. I think this was a very, very good back and forth NBA finals. For it to end the way that it did in Game 7, it makes me sick, because they were in a position where you're right there. You can still win. Tyrese starts off 3 for 5, shooting the ball extremely well. He has 9 points in like 9 minutes, 9 points in 7 minutes, and then he tears his Achilles. And I got to say, as an NBA fan first, it sucks to see all of these players go through this thing where they put everything on the line. They try to play in a critical game. And the best the NBA media sphere can do is, oh, this guy didn't play. He's soft, right? Like, he's soft. He's not a winner. He doesn't care. And most of these guys play through injury. Like, that's not a new thing. Most of these guys in the NBA are actively playing through different types of injuries on their way towards a championship, or just really through the regular season. It happens all the time. So, in my opinion, for the narrative to be Halliburton is soft, Halliburton is weak, I just don't understand. Plus, this year, they've been a gritty team. Like their identity has been a more physically demanding team than people really think. I think they really showed that side even more this year. But last year, during the playoff run, they were hurt and they still made it to the conference finals. So to me, like to follow that up with another back-to-back conference finals run, but this time you actually win in the conference finals and you go to the NBA finals, that just speaks to the fortitude that this roster had. So I respect Halliburton for going out there, but if there's one thing I'm tired of seeing, playing your players on calf strains, I think I'm over that. We've seen 3 different players go down where the calf strain turned into a full Achilles pop. We're going to miss them for a full year of basketball. Thankfully, sports medicine is in a great place now where you can actually recover from the injury and look like a better player. And to be fair, these players are much younger players, so they should be able to regroup. But we have no idea how this is going to impact their career. We have no idea if they are going to get better or still try to clean back to what they once were. I have no idea how this is going to impact Halliburton, Tatum, or Dame. Like these types of injuries are significant injuries that can change the structure of everything that you're going for. So I feel really bad. I think it's super, super, super unfortunate what happened, but it is what it is. I do want to say shout out to the Indiana Pacers. They've been easily one of the best stories in playoff basketball. They had a lot of commitment towards trying to be a very, very good basketball team. And it's hard, right? Like it is extremely hard to win at a high level in the NBA. And I think for this Pacers team specifically, this is a team that was counted out by a lot of people. For some reason, felt like they would lose to the Bucks. I didn't. I thought they were a very good team. They showed that in the first round. Then in the second round, the Cavs go down, but people are still expecting the Cavs to beat them. And even when they had their guys playing, they still got dominated by the Pacers. I just think the Pacers were able to outplay them schematically, despite the fact that they did have guys who were hurt. And then you go to the conference finals where everyone says, okay, they can't beat the Knicks because the Knicks are the real test. They are also a clutch team who just beat Boston, which a lot of people did not have the New York Knicks beating Boston in a series. Well, they play them and they beat them as well. And they go to the NBA finals and they were healthy. So to me, time and time again, the Pacers outperformed expectations. They rose in the occasion. They did not shrink. And in my opinion, they were in a position to make real history. Because let's not forget what people's expectations were headed into the series. A lot of people coming into the game had Oklahoma City dominating them for the series. Most people said it was going to be a 5-game series or a sweep. I had OKC in 6. I respected what the Pacers could do, and they even outproved me wrong by forcing a Game 7. And again, I can't say this enough. The way that Game 7 began with Tyrese Halliburton hitting clutch shots, yelling, just big bombs, and then going down, like it changed the full momentum of the game. And I don't like to do the hypothetical stuff too much where, oh, if he played, they win the game, because we don't know, right? We don't know. We don't know the truth of what that would have really, really looked like. So I don't want to go that far. But I will say we were robbed as an NBA fandom to really could have, to not see like the full pressure being applied to Oklahoma City, right? And to see the Pacers lead the game at halftime by 1 point was big. But in that third quarter, I think the battle of attrition really wore on them. I think the mental side really wore on them. You have players like Obi Toppin speaking in the postgame saying he felt the injury really stuck with him and impacted how he played for the rest of the game. And then on top of that, you have Rick Carlisle, who, while he's been a good coach in the run, in your final game of Game 7, you have Pascal Siakam on the bench in the third quarter, and that's when OKC goes in a run, right? TJ McConnell is having to pull off like great heroics against a very good defense, but the offense devolved into TJ, go get a bucket because no one else can score, and it wasn't the same snappy Pacers offense where there's movement, guys are trying to cut and score. That wasn't there. feel like all the energy in the Pacers offense was zapped as soon as Tyrese went down, and it wasn't enough. Now, even though that happened, people are going to say, well, we have to put this championship doesn't count. It counts. I'm sorry. It counts. This championship for Oklahoma City counts. And to me, my reasoning for that is because of how good they've been. Straight up. This is a team that in preseason I said was going to the NBA Finals and winning a championship this year. And I said because of their defense. And what happened? Why did they win the majority of the series that they won? Their defense was so crippling and so stifling for the other teams. And this is them looking very nasty offensively in a good chunk of these series where just shots are not falling. Guys are not being as productive as they could have been. Jalen Williams played terrible in these last two games in the most important moments. He did step up 3 games straight. So to me, you have to give him credit there. Chet was really not good in many ways offensively for a lot of these playoffs. Like, he just could not exploit mismatches clearly and consistently. So to me, when I'm viewing this situation for Oklahoma City, the unique spot that they're in is they're a team that's super young. Like, their average age is like 24, 25 at the most. And they're in a position where you just won a championship. And most of the players on your roster's core are still on their rookie deals, which means you can really run this back with the same core. They don't have many aging guys who are going to be worse next season. In fact, a lot of these guys are on track to just improve. They even have players like potentially Topic who can be value players next year. So to me, it's just an interesting spot that they find themselves in, and getting over the hump this early bodes really, really well for the prospects of them winning another championship back to back. We have not had a repeat champion since the Golden State Warriors. So for me, I got to give them a ton of credit, but the NBA Finals is officially over. We are now in a position where things are going to start slowing down, but ramping back up. Basketball won't be back until October next year, but that's not where the season starts. To me, the NBA has always had 2 other seasons attached to it. You have the regular season with the playoffs, all this other stuff, and then you have the off season, which has a legitimate life of its own, where we have the NBA draft on Wednesday, right? Seeing what players are drafted to where and what teams are trading up or down to try to get the player that they want. That's going to be an interesting subplot to watch. Seeing the teams that have been waiting for these drafts pull the trigger on some of these trades, that's going to be a fun thing to monitor. And then you also have the free agency stuff right after the draft. So there's just a lot of NBA stuff that's going to be happening. There's going to be a lot of contract extensions. There's going to be a lot of player movement in this offseason, especially when you consider the state of the Eastern Conference. Going back to the Tyrese Halliburton injury, you have a Pacers team that was the 4th seed this year, very good team, but they're not going to have their best player. Tyrese Halliburton is not going to be available for them next season, so that does limit the ceiling as to where they can go next year, at least in terms of what we know their current roster to be. When you look at the Bucks, Damian Lillard, the second best player on their team, their goal of pairing Giannis with a perimeter scorer who can be explosive down the stretch of games, Dame's not healthy. He's not going to be there at all either, which leaves this Bucks team looking really, really, really raggedy. There's no other way to say it. Then when you look over at the Philadelphia 76ers, this is a team that we still don't know the status of Joel Embiid right now. Joel Embiid right now currently is hurt, and we have no idea if he is good to go, if he's going to be once again starting the season late. We have no idea what's happening at all with Joel Embiid, and not knowing that puts their team in a real flux of a situation. And then you have the Celtics, a team that was literally a power horse in the NBA, specifically in the Eastern Conference, losing their best player and also looking to make significant changes to their roster to save on a luxury tax bill that is coming at them to avoid that $500 million payroll they're going to have to pay out at some point. So there's a lot of these teams that are going to be taking clear step backs because of these things. They might still be good enough to linger around the conversation, but they're not really contenders out east because of these impacts to the Orlando Magic. They're a team that made a dramatic swing. They traded a bunch of draft capital to get Desmond Bain on their team, but now they have a guy that really fits everything that they have been looking for to maximize their team. So that's one team. You then also have the Detroit Pistons, a super young team that won a lot of games, surprised a ton of people, are going to be trying to have Jaden Ivey come back healthy again. They still have their draft picks. What their situation could look like with Cade being an all NBA player, it's just going to be fascinating to see how these things shape out for next season. So for me, as like someone that is just really paying attention to the landscape, the Eastern Conference is in a spot where if you're one of those teams that might not have been like a top 4, top 5 team, you have confidence in yourself to rise to those levels simply due to how devastated many of the contending teams are up top, which makes the entire conference pretty much like an arms war to see who's going to come out. Right now, the early favorite is probably Cleveland simply because of their continuity, how many games they won in the regular season. But that's not a guarantee. That's not a confirmation that they're going to outright come out of the Eastern Conference. So if you're some of these other teams that might be on the fringe, you might want to make a blockbuster trade to put yourself in a similar light as the Orlando Magic or some other teams. So that is what makes this free agency period so interesting. But I also think OKC winning the title and being on the timeline that they're on really makes teams evaluate their window, their path, their current team right now to see if they are good enough right now. I'm hoping that our team, the Golden State Warriors, has that same exact mindset as to taking this approach serious. Because as a Golden State fan, I feel like Jimmy Butler, absolutely out to Andrew Wiggins, he's one of the weirdest players in NBA history, for me at least, because he has so much potential, but he's so fine with just being very laid back and casual. And while that might have worked for a time, right now moving forward, it wasn't a great fit for this roster. We needed someone to really turn up the role players and make people better in a more dynamic way. And that is 100% what Jimmy Butler did. Let's not forget how in the mud this Golden State team was last year when they made the trade for Jimmy Butler. They were not in the play-in the wrong direction. They were in danger of falling out of the play-in when they made the trade for Jimmy Butler, and they wound up making the playoffs from that position. More importantly, what Jimmy Butler did to revitalize Steph, this is the part that I really want to focus a lot of this live stream on. Stephen Curry played way better basketball with Jimmy Butler at his side, and they didn't even have like a great amount of games together to really see how things would go, but it was a very, very positive sample size. We're now hoping that that momentum can carry into the next season. But despite that Steph played way better with Jimmy, this is an aging cast of players with Steph, Draymond, Jimmy Butler. So now, if you're the Warriors, you have to look at the landscape and say, what are we going to do to stand out from the pack, right? What are we going to do to continue to have success at a high level? Vinny, I appreciate the blessings, brother. So in my opinion, when I'm looking at this Golden State team, they have to make moves. If there's one thing that I'm happy about, despite going home in the second round, which I did not like seeing it happen the way that it did, Steph going down made it clear what this roster was, which was needed, right? We did not win a game after Steph went down. A lot of people get mad. Understand that, but he still had a very, very productive game, and they still couldn't even win that game. And that speaks to the deficiencies in the roster, right? That speaks to the lack of real shooting on this team. That speaks to the lack of people that can do things with the ball in their hands dynamically. And to me, that's a very big shift that has to happen if they want to be up there with Oklahoma City. The way the Pacers punish Oklahoma for the entire series was with their shooting, with how quickly they changed their pace, and with different off-ball motion cuts and whatnot. Guess what? That's what the Golden State Warriors specialize and thrive in. That's why a lot of the matches with OKC were pretty much close in the regular season. So to build on that point and that blueprint, you have to get more players that can fit into the system and really change things dynamically. In my opinion, if you're going to make a real run for it to try to maximize the last years of Steph Curry and Draymond Green, this is the time to do it now. especially when you sign Jimmy Butler to this crazy contract that he's going to wind up being the most paid player until they extend Steph again. That's a thing that we're going to have to deal with. So in getting the guy and saying we'll figure things out later, well, guess what? This is the part now where you actually have to figure things out later. Because if you don't, this Warriors team is going to probably be in a very similar position to what they were last year. And the dangerous part is now you have a lot of the other teams that did make the playoffs last year. They're going to be looking to make it this year. The San Antonio Spurs are going to be a problem. Okay. They have a ton of young talent. They have a ton of picks still. They have Wemby, who legitimately was an all-NBA player when he played last year. They have De'Aaron Fox joining that. They have Stephon Castle. Like, they just have a lot of different guys that can do positive things, not to mention their number 2 draft pick this year to this roster. So to me, this Western Conference is only going to continue to be more and more competitive, more and more tight and close knit. So this is a time where you got to really grab the opportunity and go for it. So I'm going to be really locked into what the process is, what the approach is. And I think that these talks really start semi right now, but specifically after the draft, once we see who's there. There are a couple of draft prospects that intrigue me if you're the Golden State Warriors. My number one guy that I want them to try to get is probably a Ryan Kalkbrenner. I think Golden State needs knockdown shooting. He can be that. I also think they need size and length. He can be that. And I think that he just plays pretty well. How that'll translate to the full pro scene is another thing, though. You know, like, it's a bit harder to rely on young players, but to be fair, he spent a lot of time in college. He's won Defensive Player of the Year multiple times. And more importantly, just his knockdown ability is one of the biggest standout things about his game. So just having that with the frame and the size, that's something that could be really good in Golden State. That's a guy that I will look at. But independent of that, Golden State doesn't have a first-round pick this year. So a lot of their digging has to be through trade, through trying to match salary, find out who can go, who doesn't go. And that brings us to the biggest question of them all. I'm going to have a more in-depth conversation about this on Friday. Jonathan Kuminga. And what are we really doing with that situation? Because at a certain point, once free agency begins and we have 10 days, they're going to have to make a decision on if they're extending him or not, or if they're going to let him go into free agency. And that begs the question of, well, are the Nets really going to give him that famed contract extension that we have been talking about for a very long time? Is that going to actually be a thing that takes place? I don't know. Actually take place. So we're actively waiting in place to see what happens. I am very, very excited to witness what's going to happen, because I do think this offseason is going to be a very, very explosive one. A lot of teams are going to be angling themselves to be better in some way, shape, or form. And some teams will just get better off of subtraction, right? Just off of making their team simpler and having a better approach to what they want to do. I think the Pelicans could be a very interesting team because they didn't make the playoffs last year. They had a ton of injuries. Can they finally have a healthy season? Brandon Ingram is gone. So, like, the clunky fit of him and Zion, like, that question is gone now. This is 100% Zion's team. How will he play in space? The additional development between Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. Like, there's just going to be a lot of teams that have different looks next year. And how you dynamically fit into that equation is going to play a large part in really determining what you are as a team, what your identity is. And I think for a team in Golden State, their advantage over the other teams should be the fact that they might not have the talent the other teams do, but Steph and Jimmy Butler are a potent 1 and 2 combination. I know a lot of Warriors fans were very, very upset with Jimmy Butler not having this Herculean moment without Steph Curry to help force other games. And I can understand this, right? Like, I can definitely get that. But in my opinion, the reason why we traded for Jimmy Butler was really to buy time in the regular season when Steph gets hurt. But more importantly, it was to raise the floor and the ceiling when Steph was there as well. That was the purpose of it. And to me, he absolutely accomplished that purpose. It's unfortunate how he got hurt. And then Steph also went a significant stretch where both of them are on the floor to really evaluate. We saw the Rocket series, which was also a bit contaminated because Butler went down that series as well. But overall, when they're both together, this team is just a lot better. So improving on the margins is really where I'm focused at, 100%. But again, you have another team who just made a blockbuster trade with the Houston Rockets and Kevin Durant. That trade literally happened the same day Game 7 is tipping off. Kevin Durant is officially a Houston Rocket. And as a Warriors fan, we watched those games. That Rockets team was legitimate. They were not a good offensive team, right? Like, they did not have a great half-court approach to scoring the basketball. They didn't have consistent guys who could execute those advantages and simply make these shots. But when you add Kevin Durant into the mix, their blueprint of we're going to out-rebound you, be more physical, and just get more possessions, they're now adding a guy that when they have these extra possessions, Kevin Durant shooting the ball is a flat-out better result or reaction than a Dylan Brooks 3, than a Jalen Green, I have the ball, let me try to self-create over tough defense, right? Having Kevin Durant in those ways, his specialty is to bail you out of those moments. But the specific part that I like about it is this is the first team where KD is going there and there's a clear defensive tilt. Like, this isn't a team that is built on three guys having to carry. This is the team that says, hey, we have Kevin Durant. Our next best player is probably Alperen Şengün. A lot of people are banking on the growth and the development of Amin Thompson, how he raises their ceiling. But there's a way more defensively honed roster, and KD just has to be the guy to knock down shots and really try to settle down the half-court offense as much as possible. And that's going to make them a much more important threat, considering the fact that we went 7 games with them last year. To be fair, we weren't healthy in that round, so that does change things ever so slightly. But nonetheless, they pushed us to the very brink of elimination, and they got better. The Spurs got better. OKC just won the title. They're keeping the majority of their guys. They're all young. They're probably, guess what, going to be better. We don't know what Denver does, but Denver was a playoff team last year. They're still going to be good. The Clippers are such an interesting team because does James Harden resign or not? We don't know. Like, there's a lot of questions we have to ask ourselves. So there's going to be some offseason shenanigans that have to take place to see what's going to shift conversations and change the mood of how teams are currently looking. So I'm just excited to see what that process will look like for the Western Conference. And I think that in turn will give us the answer we need as to just how good Golden State's going to be next year as a team. But we have a long wait until that rubber has to meet the road. The draft is on Wednesday, and then shortly after that, we are going to have free agency. I will be having many updates with the results of the NBA draft. On Friday, I'm going to actually be recapping how the NBA draft went. If there were any blockbuster trades or moves that happened, we'll be speaking on that as well. And then we'll also see if there's anything that Golden State does. I will make sure to break down the prospects that Golden State does wind up drafting this year, if I think they can be good fits and play right away on this team, because that's really the most current pressing question we have right now. There's just a lot that has to change, in my opinion, for Golden State to be the team that they so desperately want to be. You got the second option now. You have Steph Curry. You still have a very good defensive force in Draymond Green, but the offensive variance around them has to be better. You have to get more guys who can shoot and just be a threat in many different ways on the floor. It cannot just be a Steph and Butler carry me offensive, process if you're going to win a championship next year. But that's all I got for today's stream. Again, we do these streams on Bleacher Report on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Wednesday's episode has been canceled by the Bleacher Report staff, but we will be back on Friday to recap the draft and some more things on the Golden State Warriors. Again, my name is Gifted. I do a ton of NBA streams. There's going to be a lot more things that I'm doing in the offseason as well, so make sure to tap in to my YouTube at Gifted Hoops. You'll be able to catch the VODs for that on the Bleacher Report channel, but also on the YouTube that I have. up here. So appreciate you guys. It's been a great stream. Have a good one. I will see you guys Friday. Salute. Peace out, people.